I'm going to go ahead and take a look at doing a quick demonstration of how to create calendars in Adobe InDesign without using tables. I hate using tables for calendars because they are very clunky and cumbersome to edit, like fill settings. It can also be really awkward for updating in the future for any changes like year over year. So I'm assuming if you're watching this that you're at least familiar with Adobe InDesign in its basics. But what we're going to be working to create is something similar to this, where I have a completed calendar. And then when I need to update it year over year, I just simply have to do a quick shift. So by adding or removing a column break would shift all the dates for the year in the calendar, making it super easy to update year over year and to work with in general. So to show how I've done this, I'm going to switch to my second blank page and we're going to get started. So what I'm going to use here instead of tables is a feature technique in InDesign called Gridify that allows you to draw one big shape and then divide it into rows and columns to create a grid. So Gridify can be used on shapes and any type of shape. It can be used on custom shapes. It can be used on circles or triangles. Typically, it's probably more used traditionally for grids in a square format. But the beauty of Gridify is that it also works for text boxes. So I can create a grid of text boxes. The additional benefit of using Gridify on text boxes is that it automatically, by default, threads those text boxes together. So I can easily flow from one box to another. And again, I'm going to be using a particular type of break character. So if you hit the enter or return key that is above the shift key on your keyboard, that creates a new paragraph hidden character, invisible character. If you hold down shift and hit that same return key, you get a line break. So it doesn't create a new paragraph, but it does break the line to the next line. The last option we have, and what I'm going to be utilizing today, is the enter key that is next to the number pad on your keyboard. So I'm not exactly sure how you would do this without having a keyboard that has a number pad. I think you would have to insert a special character, and that might be very tedious. But I always keep keyboards that have the number pad for this reason specifically. It's very easy to hit that enter key. So I'm working on a PC keyboard. I have two enter keys, one above the shift key and one at the number pad. I believe if you're working on a Mac keyboard, you should have a return key above the shift key, which is more traditional, and then having an enter key at your number pad. So for my purposes here, I'm just going to refer to it as the enter key and or the column break, which is the character that hitting that key produces. So basically all I'm going to do is set up a grid of text boxes and type in my numbers for each day of the calendar and separate between those. To push between the different threaded text boxes, I'm going to use a column break. So I'm going to jump into this really quickly. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to my first square here. So I am going to go ahead and do some quick things to make sure that I have the other items needed, not just the numbers. So thinking about what I'm going to need in this space, I need, if I think about it more like it's a table, but I'm not setting up a table, I still need to have rows and columns. So I know that I need to have 7 columns for the days of the week, Sunday through Saturday. I know that you typically have to have 5 rows for the actual numbers of the days of the month. I want to have an extra row for identifying what day of the week it is, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then I also want to have an additional row that I can display the month as a heading kind of row. And again, this is going to be easier because I'm working with simple text boxes as opposed to cells in a table and having to merge or unmerge and all those adjustments that are clunky in tables. So I know that I need to have, like I said, 5 rows for numbers, 1 row for the days of the week, and 1 row for the month. So that gives me 7 rows, and then I have 7 columns. So I'm going to work with this space here. And I'm going to jump into Gridify. So the way Gridify works is that you draw a shape or text box or whatever it is that you're working with, and before you let go of the mouse to finish creating that box or shape, you're going to use the arrow keys on your keyboard to add or remove columns and rows. And then if you hold down Control and use those same arrow keys, you can manipulate the space between the columns and rows. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and demonstrate this. I'm going to click at the top of my space here. I'm going to drag my text box so it's aligned with these guides. And you notice that I am just holding here. If I let go, it'll just make a text box this size. But I'm going to hold down on my mouse key until I'm done making my grid. And this is just how easy the Gridify tool works. So if I use my right arrow key, it is going to add columns. Or if I use my left arrow key, it's going to remove them. So right, 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 left, left, left. You see that I am adding and removing rows. It does give it a default gutter space between the items. So we see that in the middle. So we'll adjust that later. So I do need to make sure that I have 7 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I also need 7 rows. So just like with the left and right to add or remove columns, you use the up and down arrow keys to add or remove rows. So I have one already. Two, why is my arrow key isn't working? Oh no. So left and right work. Oh, I'm sorry. I was hitting the down key, which removes instead of the up key, which adds, the up arrow. So make sure I still have the right number of columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I have 8, so I need to reduce that by 1. And now I have 2 rows, and hitting the up arrow key to add rows. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So obviously this makes very small text box squares with a lot of space between them. And that's not what I want. I actually want all of this to be kind of overlapping, connected. I want 0 space between the rows and columns. So to control that, I use the same arrow keys in the same direction, but I hold down the Control key on the keyboard while I do it. So holding down the Control key, using left and right arrows, left will reduce space between columns, right will add space between columns. So adding space between columns, hitting right, obviously that's not what I want. Removing space between columns using the left arrow key while holding down the Control key. So I'm going to repeat the same thing, but I'm going to use up and down arrows to remove the space between the rows. So the up arrow would increase the space. The down arrow will decrease the space. So once I have those lined up, I can see there I still have just a tiny bit of space. I want them to just be perfectly touching. I now have a nice 7 by 7 grid. And you see that when I let go of that, I can see that I obviously have text boxes. And I can also see, because I have my text threads turned on, that it automatically threaded all these text boxes together. And what's nice about that is it also threads it in the traditional reading pattern. So it starts at the first box and goes from left to right and then moves down to the next line, left to right. So it follows our natural reading pattern for English language and so on. So I do know that I want this first row to be the name of the month, and I have all of these text boxes. That's really not what I want. If I was working with a table, I would have to select all these as cells and then tell it to merge the cells. And while that does work, sometimes it can cause problems when you're adjusting rows when you have merged cells, and it's just clunky. So I'm going to go ahead and delete just these text boxes. And what's nice is that also kind of removes the threading from this first box. Or excuse me, no, it did, since I removed these boxes, it automatically threaded to the next one. So I am going to go ahead and adjust this to be the full width. And I'm going to double click on this output to break the text thread between this box and the next box. So now if I have all these selected, these guys are all threaded together, but this box is not threaded to any other box. That is correct. That is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and type the first month in here. This is January. And I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of common settings. I like to make sure that this is center aligned for the paragraph alignment. I'm going to go ahead and increase the weight. I'm going to make this all caps, and I'm going to increase the size a little bit. So because it's the month heading, we want that to be nice and big for when we're scanning through reading it. The last thing I'm going to do is with just the box selected, not the text, I'm going to hit Control B, which is the keyboard shortcut to open the text frame options menu. I do also like, especially for calendars, to make sure that my text is vertically centered in the text box as opposed to aligned to the top. That is a personal preference for these type of things. Depending on what type of calendar you're making, if I was using 1 month for a single page, like a wall calendar where the top page is a picture and the bottom page is just the single month, I would potentially look more at having my text smaller in, say, either the bottom right corner or the top left corner. So I wouldn't do this for that. But a small little desktop calendar, reference calendar like this, I kind of like having all of it to be aligned vertically. So the vertical justification to center. So that way, if I end up adjusting these boxes at all, the text will always stay in the center instead of being aligned to the top. Okay, so next one I'm going to go through. This first row is all threaded together. I do want to make sure that this row does not thread to the next one. So again, I'm going to click just the last box. I want to keep the threads here, but to break a text thread from one box to another, you just have to click on either the output point here of this box or the input point here. Either one. That's still trying to link to something, so I'm going to undo that. I think I prefer to do the out point here, so I'm going to just double click that. Oh, I think when I clicked before, I clicked again and it attached to another box. So technically, if I double click that, it does kind of load the cursor and I could connect it to a different box, but that's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted to double click to break that thread because I don't want the position of the days of the week to change, only for the numbers. So quickly, I'm going to go ahead and type in the short abbreviations. So between each box, instead of using a tab or hitting the arrow key to move to the next cell in a table, I'm going to use my column break to separate between each text box. So every time I need to move to the next text box, I'm going to type that, I'm going to hit that enter key at my number pad to create a column break. And you notice I do have my hidden characters turned on. But it's not quite showing. Oh, you know what? I got some issues again with this because I have some Arabic settings applied to my my documents by default that I should have turned on or turned off. So let me double check my. This would not normally apply to you unless you're someone who has installed the Arabic language version of InDesign. So bear with me while I troubleshoot this really quick. So that's English. I need to make sure that it is moving left to right. Yes, so my paragraph direction is right to left. It should be left to right. And the alignment is left. Okay. I thought I had changed that previously. So my apologies there. But you see, I have this hidden character after the U that looks like a little down arrow, a little down caret. That is the new, or is a column break invisible character. So it says push any text after this to the next box. You'll notice that hashtag is the end of story, so you'll always see that at wherever your text ends. So it's just going to keep pushing from box to box. So I have Sunday, then Monday, column break, Tuesday, column break, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So now if I hit that column break again, I'm going to see that it should have given me overset text. Oh, no, it just added it there. If I hit another one, it would be overset text. So it can sit in the box. It pushes anything after this marker to the next box. So I am going to select all of these and make them center again. I think I installed the Arabic version and it doesn't allow you to just select the text box and do paragraph alignments. You should be able to do that if you're working with a traditional English language Adobe InDesign. Again, I'm going to hit Command B, Control or Command B. I'm working on a PC, so it's Control. If you're on a Mac, it's Command, and change that alignment to center. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and select all of these right here and do the same thing. Control B, text frame options, vertical justification to center. Again, that's just a personal preference. So I don't have to do it later. In this first text box here of these threaded text boxes, I'm going to go ahead and set my alignment to center, and that's going to carry through all the threaded text boxes moving forward. So I'm going to pretend that this calendar is for January of 2025. So I am going to double check really quick what those dates are. What day does that start on? So the first day, January 1st of 2025, is a Wednesday, and January has 31 days in the month. So starting with Wednesday, I'm just going to go ahead and type in all my numbers. So after I'm done with the first month and I start to make consecutive months, I am going to thread 1 month to the next month. So I do need to add my column breaks to any of these empty boxes that are not displaying numbers. So I'm going to start in the first box for Sunday, add a column break, column break, column break. The first day is a Wednesday. So I'm going to go ahead and type a 1, and then I'm going to type each number and a column break. 2, column break, 3, column break, 4, column break, and just so on down the line. I did have to overcome some muscle memory habits with this. I'm so used to working with tables that I want to tab or use the arrow keys to move through these text boxes as I'm typing. But again, even though this looks kind of like a table, it isn't a table, but it does make it so much more convenient to work with. 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. All right, so I'm still going to add one more column break into each of these that I have, if I don't have a number, I do have an invisible column break character. So now I have January set up. I'm loving the way this is looking. Now I am going to hit W on my keyboard, making sure I'm not using my type tool, and switch into preview mode. So now we can see what this will actually look like printed or exported. So you may be perfectly happy with this, or you can also apply shape attributes like stroke and fill to text boxes. So quickly, I'm just going to show that. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these and give everything a simple 1-point black stroke. And I do want to double check that those stroke settings, I kind of want it to be on center so that it, for the stroke settings, so that it looks correct with the overlapping. My stroke panel is flying out kind of weird here. Let me pull my properties panel out. And then my stroke. So yeah, it is currently set to stroke to center. So that is what I want. So that as it overlaps, it's even. Otherwise, if you set it to like the outside or the inside, it's basically going to visually double your stroke. Okay, so I'm going to take January and I'm going to give it a fill. So maybe I want that to be, I'm going to go with this blue. And maybe I want the text to be white. So again, changing from the shape formatting to text formatting in my swatches list helps me edit those independently. So that was super easy to switch between. And then I'm going to go through. So if I'm trying to affect shape attributes, I don't have to select the text like this, like you do to try and select cells in a table. I could just work more with these like they're individual shapes. So using my selection tool, I'm going to select all of those. I'm also going to give them a fill of maybe 15% gray. And now I have a nice little table. So when I hit the W key, I get the preview of what it's going to look like. So it does have the nice little grid of lines. And then I can affect color, fill options, text options as well. Certainly this is because this is threaded text boxes, it's almost like it's one text box. So if I use my keyboard shortcut Control or Command A to select all, it's going to select everything, all the text that is within a set of threaded text boxes. So I could change my font here if I wanted to, or maybe I want to choose a different font for whatever reason. You can see that's easily done. So I can, select individual characters. Like if I wanted to say, this is a holiday, I'm going to make those red. I can just select the text and change text, or I can change the attributes of the text box with its fill and stroke properties. So maybe I want red text and a yellow background to signify holidays. So I can edit those very easily. Do keep in mind that even though these are threaded, they are not grouped. So you do need to be careful when you're kind of like touching things and moving things around. It will still maintain the threading in that order, but your boxes are out of order. So do keep that in mind. You may choose to group these as a chunk for each month. All right, so I'm gonna hit W again to exit out of that preview mode. So now I want to show you the benefit of doing this is that you can connect one month to the next, which is almost impossible with a table setup. So all I'm going to do is this is already set up exactly how I want it. So I'm just going to select all of these, and I'm going to use one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts is holding down the Option key to duplicate and holding down the Shift key to keep this in alignment. So with holding both of those at the same time, and I said Alt, that is Alt Option, so it might be Option on your Mac keyboard. So I'm just going to duplicate that, go ahead and make my quick changes. February? I think that's right. I always have problems with spelling February. So I know that if January ended on the 31st on a Friday, then February is going to start the 1st on a Saturday. So all I have to do here is add extra column breaks until my one gets in the position of the date or the day of the week that it needs to be on. So if it needs to be Saturday, I'm just going to add a column break, column break, column break. You will notice that I have overset text here at the bottom. Maybe I can zoom in on that a little bit so you can see that a little better. Nope, that still stays small. But obviously I ran out of boxes and I had 31 days in that calendar that I copied. So I just need to remove the extra days. I'm going to remove the 29, 30, and 31. And then I have that last column break there. I want the end of paragraph, or excuse me, end of story, that hashtag symbol to, it can be in the next box without it being overset text. So February only has the 28 days, so this is now correct. Again, I can go ahead and make any changes if I needed to. Because I duplicated this, it kind of picked up those different attributes that I had applied. So I'm just going to kind of reset those. And the last part that I'm going to do, so if I have my days of the week are threaded, so if I ever made any changes, that would update. It's just easier to type that way. And using the Gridify for even spacing. And then I put all my numbers in. So I have column breaks in my empty cells. These are text boxes, but we kind of think of them as cells. So for any of those that are empty, we still want to make sure we have a column break character in there. And the reason why is so that we can connect each month together. So when I have both of these formatted, all I have to do is go to the last box in January and connect it to the first day number box. I'm not going to connect it at the top of February because that stuff is not threaded. So the last box in this chunk of threads to the first box in this chunk of threads. And you see, all it did was add the text thread because I already had the column breaks in place. It did not shift any of the numbers. So just to quickly show, you could repeat this process on down through December for a 12-month calendar. Maybe you need an 18-month or a 24-month calendar. So you can just keep duplicating that process of, copying the month with all the threaded text boxes and then just connecting the end of one month to the start of the next month. And that connects all of the different months together. So that's really beneficial when you go the next year. I'm going to zoom in again here just so we can see a little better. So when the next year comes around, I created this calendar for 2025. I need to update the calendar for 2026. And if you're working with tables, you basically have to just clear the contents of the whole table and type in the numbers for each day in each month's calendar manually. There is not a way to just push things in one direction or another. So this is the real reason why I prefer Gridify to tables for making these. So I am just going to do a quick double check of what day January 2026 starts on, because I can never remember the pattern. I know that they shift in one direction or another each year. So if January 2025 started on a Wednesday, 2026 starts on a Thursday. So all I have to do to update the entire calendar, so not just the month of January, if I connect each calendar to the next one, then when I make the change in January, it will update every attached threaded calendar after that. So our example here just shows January and February, but you see that when I add an additional column break to push January 1st from Wednesday to Thursday, it automatically moved everything in February as well. So I could choose to maybe remove these extra ones. Make sure I grab all of them, because it does look kind of weird that February starts on a Sunday, but in the second row. So I could just remove all of those so it does line up correctly. And actually, I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to cut them instead, because I do need them here at the bottom. So I'm just going to paste them there so that when I connect February to March, I have all of these and all the dates shift appropriately. So that is the quick and easy way. It certainly took longer to demonstrate than it usually does to do once you have mastered it. So it's just use Gridify to create a grid of threaded text boxes, type in your numbers, and then in any of the empty text boxes for your calendar, make sure that you're using a column break, and then you separate each number with a column break. An additional efficiency tool versus typing, you could maybe go into an Excel spreadsheet or Google spreadsheet, type one, and then copy it down really quickly in those cells until it gets to 30 or 31. You could paste that into your threaded text boxes, and then maybe do a fine change to find new paragraph markers and replace with the column break markers. Might be just even a little bit more efficient than having to manually type all of these numbers. So I hope if you're already an InDesign user, and particularly if you're somebody who has been using tables to manage monthly calendars, and particularly if you have to update those year over year, I hope that a few minutes of correctly setting up in the first place now with using Gridify saves you a tremendous amount of time for editing calendars in the future. Let me know if there's anything else that you would like to see me demonstrate.